Hello, everyone. This is episode 2, I guess, of my senior project podcast, sports podcast, with Thomas Lee here.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Hey, and we're gonna talk about some things that we didn't cover yesterday with Brian, like the Seahawks. How about that? How about that game yesterday?
I would say that was, although the score turned out to be like only a 12-point game, that was a complete demolishing. I mean, you talk about offensively in the first quarter, the Russell Wilson pass to Sidney Rice for 31 yards. That was just great play right there. And then you see that they got Zach Miller involved again. And
Oh, did he play?
yeah, he actually.
Oh, really?
Played. He caught a 15-yard touchdown pass as well, and ended up with 5 catches, 40 yards. So in some sense, he's getting back into the offense, which is a huge part of our team because Luke Wilson, he's a rookie, so, I mean, he's done some things. I mean, he actually has, but I would say for this team to be competitive later on, you would need to have every piece of your offense clicking.
Yeah, interesting thing, by the way, for people that didn't catch earlier, Seahawks won 34-22 away against the Cardinals, which, they're a pretty average team. It's not bad. I wasn't that worried when they lost to the Colts a couple of weeks ago because, they're a good team and not really concerning to me. I was more concerned when they almost lost to the Titans at home. They were only a touchdown away.
Yeah, that game, I think, there's just, I don't know. I mean, the Seahawks were good. It's just, they just made some plays that were not that, typical of them. And they kind of let them in because there's many chances that they could just totally stomped on the Titans and blew them away.
And my thought is if Jake Locker was playing for the Titans, would we have lost?
It's possible. It would be possible because Jake Locker actually was playing pretty good before his injury. And now you see that. I mean, because, heck, the quarterback what was his name? Ryan Fitzpatrick. That guy, turnover machine.
What happened to Cobb?
Kevin Cobb? I don't know where he went. That guy, he's a wash, too. So, I mean, really, Jake Locker would have added a dimension in their offense that would have allowed the Titans possibly to run because Chris Johnson was shut down in that game.
He was on my fantasy team actually, and I mean, I kind of regretfully started him or reluctantly started him.
Mm-hmm.
The Seahawks have a pretty easy schedule coming up. St. Louis, Tampa actually would be tougher, I would say, but they're 0-5, and we're at home.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's gonna be an easy win.
The next 2 weeks. Or do they have a bye next week?
They have a bye in the 12th week, and we just finished the 7th.
Oh, okay. Never mind then.
I guess the Falcons are 1-4, and they're after that.
Mm-hmm.
The team that we lost to in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
We'd be playing away at them, and Minnesota is at home. I mean, we don't lose at home, especially the 1-4 teams. So I mean, I think the Seahawks have a pretty easy schedule going into the bye week. And my question is, do you think they're going to lose another game?
I want to say the New Orleans and the San Francisco game, week 13, week 14, will probably be the 2 weeks that you'd want to look at.
Yeah, I'd say at San Francisco is the one I've been kind of looking at. I mean, versus San Francisco, that was a big game too, but that was home game, and the Seahawks have a history of not losing at home. I remember right before the Indianapolis Colts game, I was having the little test podcast with Brian and Tristan. It didn't work out because audio problems, and but Tristan called the Indianapolis game. We were having the same conversation. Do you think the Seahawks will ever lose this year? Was the question, and he was like, "Well, I think this week is probably gonna be their toughest matchup of the season, and if they don't win today, if they don't win today, then they'll probably win out." But he didn't think they were gonna win.
Well, that's interesting because they actually should have won that Indy game. There was a lot of things that they did.
The defense didn't do that well.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I've noticed about the Seahawks is for how great their defense is being known. They're known for the defense. They can't really defend the short pass. It seems like when I watch, they always they give up short passes really easily.
That bunch formation that everybody used, even in preseason, it's really impacted how they play because what they do is with Sherman and Browner, they're a lot of press man. so they like the one-on-one matchups. But when you have a bunch formation, you have guys running around and you can't bump them at the line.
Right.
And then so it kind of screws up what they do. Because I remember T.Y. Hilton, that the Colts wide receiver that got the huge pass off Sherman. That I think they were in a bunch formation. I'm not exactly sure, but basically Sherman couldn't jam him at the line, and then you see him just get a huge opening between Earl and Richard, and you're like, wait, that usually doesn't happen. Well, it's because they're probably in a bunch formation, so you can't really jam anybody, because if you do, it kind of like, well, I don't know why, but like, you don't really press on when you have a bunch formation, because usually people spread all over the place and they run into each other, so it's like really bad for the defense if they tried to press on them. But overall, I'm looking at the stats right now. Looks like the defense didn't do like terrible, but they just weren't consistent. And I think, offensively, we didn't score a lot of touchdowns at all.
Right. And I mean, well, you mean against the Arizona game, or are you talking
Oh, no, the Colts game.
The Colts game. Yeah, well, we scored 28, which is about what we scored against Arizona. I mean, the offense has definitely not been struggling. The game they struggled the most was the first game against Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
They only scored 12 points there,
Mm-hmm.
but their defense held up in that one. It seems like they always score just enough to win.
Well, I think part of the matter is that we don't have a healthy offensive line. If you
Okung's out.
Ever since I think week 2 or something like that, we've not had an offensive line. You always had guys like Michael Bowie, Jean-Pierre that one time at center. All these guys that are like, they're
You got
good
Bobby
enough.
Wagner's out, I guess.
Yeah. They're good enough to be on our offensive line, but they're not that Pro Bowl level caliber players that we had at the starting, because Breno's out right now. Unger's still kind of getting back into shape, I guess. Okung's out for another 4 weeks or something like that. And then, so you have all these guys that are transitioning in and out of different roles, and they're doing their best, and they've actually been, alright, considering the fact that they are like rookies and stuff like that. So
Right, and once we get all these guys back, they're gonna be so much better. Like Percy Harvin. Once we get Percy Harvin back, we haven't played a game with him yet, but he'll. Do you think he'd be the number one option over Sidney Rice and Golden Tate?
It's going to be interesting. I don't think, to be totally honest, I don't think the Seahawks have a clear number one. Everybody steps up at every game, because if you think about it, whoever's open, Russell will throw it to. Russell doesn't really target anybody in particularly, unless they're like the only guy getting open and stuff like that.
Right. Which also leaves me the question: who do you think is going to be assuming he comes back this year, Percy Harvin, which he's expected to at some point. He's actually expected to return to practice next week, it says. Who do you think is going to be out of the wide receiver equation? Will it be Doug Baldwin or Jermaine Kearse?
I would say probably Kearse at this point.
Really?
Just because Baldwin has played with Russell for at least a full year, and he's been, I think, their most consistent. Like, if they need a clutch catch, I would probably throw it to Baldwin. So, in that sense, I don't think you can get rid of Baldwin like that, especially because a few years back, he was the leading receiver on your team. So,
right.
In that sense, he brings a lot of value, and he's still young. Kearse, he has some big playability, but I think that he hasn't shown enough consistency. I guess playing time is also a factor. But I would say definitely Kearse would be out, or not out, but like just less plays for Harvin.
So you think he'd just play as the kick return guy, punt return guy?
He'll probably get a couple snaps still at receiver, because he can still make those plays, as you saw. And plus, I think the Seahawks, their wide receiving core is I think they always manage it a bit differently than most teams. Because if you see like let's say Detroit, for example, they have Calvin Johnson. He's always on the field. You always think. But like on our team, we see that Sidney Rice is moving, like gets plays off. He's not always on the field. You see this guy and this guy, and so it's like not really like any couple guys that are always on the field. You always see different matchups and stuff like that. So I mean, you might see Curse more, you might see him less, and plus, even once Harvin gets back, you're not gonna see him going at every play or something like that.
Right. And sorry, I'm just looking at the injured reserve list here.
Mm-hmm.
Who's B.J. Daniels? He's listed as a quarterback for the Seahawks, and he was apparently drafted in the 7th round last year by the 49ers. Sorry, wrong sport. By the 49ers. And why do we have him, and why is he important?
I have no clue. I actually saw that once, saw that on ESPN, and I was like, hey, look, they stole a draft pick back. Well, I don't know. Clearly, they liked something about him, or they were just trying to get strategically.
Yeah, well, they also just Tavares Jackson came back too. I didn't actually notice that until they played him in a game a while ago. But I guess 3 quarterbacks isn't that unusual. So how about playoff baseball? You want to talk playoff baseball?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. So you have you been watching the series lately?
Oh man, dude. That Detroit-Boston series has been...
It's pretty tight.
Pretty,
They're, Boston's up 3-2, and St. Louis is up 3-2 in their series also. So I guess no really clean sweeps.
Yeah.
I posed this question to Brian Buck yesterday. I was reading a tweet earlier about how apparently... Some guy said he thought that out of all the Seattle Mariners players, the only position player that would start on either the ALCS teams would be Kyle Seager at third base for probably the Red Sox, obviously not the Tigers.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of made me think the Mariners have quite a ways to go if they want to be good at all.
I mean, the Mariners, oh man, where to begin? They just need to be consistent. We have a lot of young players right now, but the thing is you look at, I mean, I'm not going to say blow it up again because that's just really bad.
Well, we need a new general manager.
Yeah, I think that's true. Because Jack, I think he's brought a lot of talent in, but in terms of veteran signings, it hasn't been working out well at all.
No, well, we signed guys like Raul Ibanez, and he was supposed to be a bench bat, and he wasn't supposed to be anything other than a DH, occasional first base, and maybe in the outfield if he had to be, and then he turns halfway into the year into our starting left fielder.
Mm-hmm.
And you just can't do that with with a guy who's that old and that bad defensively.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will give him credit for those 29 home runs.
But, he didn't beat the record, did he?
No, he didn't. He really dropped off after the All-Star break.
Yeah, and that's kind of what people were expecting, I think, of him.
Mm-hmm.
When he had 20 home runs in June, people were like,
Yeah.
oh my god, he's going to break the record of Ted Williams for most home runs most home runs for a guy who's over 40 years old in a season. And obviously he didn't quite make it. Do you think Raul should be back this year?
I don't know, because in some sense, you saw him wear out at the second part after the All-Star break. So in that sense, I don't know if you really want him back. I mean, he did give you 29 home runs, and he's a leader in the clubhouse, but you saw how bad he dropped off. In some sense, you signed him for no value at all. You really just wanted a veteran presence that could play once in a while. So I guess in some sense to expect that again, that would be just over the top and unreasonable.
Right, I think he would definitely come back, but I don't know if we'd want him back.
Yeah, because you see all the moves. I mean, I don't think we need another guy. I mean, you can find a guy like Raul, but maybe more a better player and probably not cheaper. But I mean, the Mariners are just. We want to see them succeed, but at the same time, there's just that sense of frustration you always feel about them. They always see, because there's a lot of people out there that want to see them succeed, like you and I and whatever fan base out there.
Yeah.
But it's just over and over again they keep making those mistakes that are why did you do that, or stuff like that. So I just want to know whether or not they're serious or not. Obviously the owner dying or passing away is probably gonna impact something, which leads me to say, where are the what's the direction of the Mariners?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I think a lot of people are thinking about the direction the Mariners are headed in, and whether it's a good one or a bad one. I think most people would say it's probably a bad direction considering the extension of Jack Zduriencik for 1 year or more. Honestly, we don't know how many more years it could have been. They could have extended him for like 3 years, and that would just be a nightmare. But I was looking kind of at these free agents that are going to be here coming up, and so there's some who I'd rather see, like, instead of Raul Ibanez, I'd rather see if they're going to get a veteran like an Austin Kearns maybe, or like a Corey Hart or someone like that. They're probably going to be more expensive, but we have a lot of money coming off, and I'd rather see someone who could actually be more productive than Raul. Raul being just a bench bat, whereas these guys could actually play more and make more of an impact on the field. Because I know Raul was a lead by example type of guy. I don't think he did a lot of actual like mentoring in the clubhouse. I know he had the couple of closed door yelling fests at the players, but that kind of thing. But I think we have dissected the Mariners quite a bit. On the topic of the actual postseason itself that's going on right now, I would say I'm a Red Sox fan right now for some reason. I don't have anything against the Tigers per se, and I kind of like how the Red Sox were worse than the Mariners, and now they're in the playoffs. In 2012, they had a worse record than the Mariners did, and now here they are, possibly going to the World Series and possibly winning the World Series.
Well, it's really interesting if you think about, like, remember that like big trade they made with the Dodgers?
Yeah.
Sending all those guys. Well, now both those teams are like.
And I was just thinking that like 3 minutes ago, like looking at the cover page of ESPN, like Adrian Gonzalez.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that would be a great World Series, I think, if you saw the Dodgers versus Red Sox.
Oh yeah, that'd be like an old timers World Series too, because those are like old teams.
Yeah, I mean,
actually, all these teams are like old traditional teams.
To be totally honest, like I think this World Series is actually gonna be good either way, because I think every team has pitching, every team can hit, and you just have to like figure out who makes their mistakes. Because I've been watching this Boston-Detroit series. Every game is like one run. Like game 2, I think, when Sox were down 5-1 or something like that, and Poppy hit that grand slam. Like that was just one pitch, and it changed the whole dimension of the game, because then Red Sox went on to win it, and that was 1-1 at the time. But Tigers could have been
right. 2-0. I was watching that game. I remember.
They could have been 2-0 going home, and possibly gone maybe one game, and would have been one out of 2 at home, and then went back to Boston 3-1. Who knows what the series could have been? Now it's Boston leading 3-2. So.
Right, and it probably will be an interesting World Series to watch. I remember back in like 2011, was that the one? No, that was 2010. Sorry, 2010 when it was Giants and Rangers, and when the Giants made the World Series over the Phillies, I was so happy because I was like totally like calling that. I was like, oh yeah, the Giants are gonna beat the Phillies. Everyone's like, no, the Phillies pitching is so good. And then when the Giants won, I was so happy, and everyone's like, oh, it's like the most boring World Series in history. It's gonna be 4-0 Texas, and the Giants went on to win 4-2. So I mean, you can never know what a good World Series will be. Like, for all you know, it could be like Boston versus St. Louis, and one could blow out the other. Or it could be like last year, and we could go have 7 games and one of the best World Series ever.
Yeah, that's true.
Or was that 2011? I think it's 2011 with David Freese and the Rangers.
Yeah.
That was 2011. Okay, that was a good one.
Last year was who was it last year?
Yeah,
I kind of
Giants.
Oh yeah, Giants and some Detroit.
Yeah, Giants over the Tigers.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to be totally honest, like, I wish a lot more people were interested in postseason baseball. I mean, around here or something like that. I kind of wish people were interested in college baseball, because I don't really care about college baseball, and it's because no one else cares about college baseball. If it was like something people watched, I would totally like pay attention to it. But I just like it's not televised enough, and it doesn't give enough coverage. And I feel like because of that, I wouldn't
like to spend all the time like looking for coverage.
Well, I think in some sense, baseball is just not really, like, I want to say it's falling out of favor, but it's like a lot of the times people just want to watch these fast action sports and like
Right.
NBA, NFL, and stuff like that. I mean, not saying baseball is like boring
Slow.
or anything, but it is.
It is slower.
It is slow, and it takes time to process, or not process, but like for the game to process. That is, into like something interesting, because you kind of wait until like maybe the 8th or 9th inning if somebody's down like 1 or 2 runs, whether or not they can make a comeback, because what. Either that, like the first inning, you don't really expect much unless somebody like, like Felix striking out the side on like 9 pitches, or you see like guys going back to back to back to back on a solo shot.
Right, and that's the thing. Like ESPN and all the other TV stations that try to, sell baseball because they play baseball and they want people to watch it. They try to sell it like really, really well, but it's not easy to sell when it's like pitch 30 seconds later, pitch 30 seconds later, and it's like I love the game baseball because I'm watching it not just to see the action, but because there's strategy involved and it's interesting. But people that like aren't avid baseball fans, it's hard for them to become avid baseball fans.
I feel like baseball, you really need a great first experience or something like that, and then
like you.
Yeah, I was always interested in baseball before then, but
for those of you guys who don't know, I took Thomas to his first ever Major League Baseball game in 2012, and it was the Philip Umber Perfect Game in Safeco Field. Just happened to be his first game that he ever went to.
However, I'm still winless in every Mariners game.
Yeah, I've taken him to like 3 or 4 since then, and we always lose.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's your fault. No, I remember the second game I took, I went with Thomas too. We were just kind of walking around the ballpark, and it was Alexi Ogando against us of the Rangers. And I was like, Thomas, every single game you go to is going to be a perfect game. And I walked around, and I went to this Rangers fan, and I'm like, Alexi Ogando's going to throw a perfect game today. And he just started laughing awkwardly, and I'm like, no, it's true. And I started walking away, and I'm like, that guy thinks I'm crazy. And it didn't happen, so he probably did think I was crazy. But if it happened, would I have been from the future?
I don't know.
That guy probably would dedicate his entire life to finding how to get to the future. Like time travel would have been real, man.
I don't know.
Think about making bold predictions. Like if you're watching an NCAA tournament game and you predict the 16 seed over the 1 seed.
Yeah.
And everyone thinks that you're amazing.
Crazy, but then you end up getting the best bracket out.
That's the thing. I'm okay with making bold predictions on brackets because people think you're crazy for 2 minutes, but if you have a bold prediction that comes true, people will remember it. You'll be that guy.
You'll be that guy because you'll be that guy with the money, and everybody else says that should have not happened.
Yeah, there's no way I'm not gonna bet on that kind of stuff like real money, but I'll bet my ego on it. I'm totally okay with that. I actually did an experiment with NCAA basketball last year, and I kind of want to write an article about it when March Madness starts again, and they've just announced the brackets. That I did an experiment trying 4 different methods of making brackets. I did one where I spent about 12 hours looking at extensive scouting reports on each team, deciding who'd win each matchup. And I did one where, because on ESPN, with every matchup, they have a percentage of how likely they are to win. And then they also show what everyone is saying, who everyone thinks will win, the people that are making brackets. So I did one where I did a random number generator based on the percentages and did that to choose. And then I did one where I played the odds, and whatever the ones that were being underestimated I chose. And then I did just 2 coin flip brackets where I flipped a coin for literally every matchup. And it was interesting to see which ones actually did well. One of the coin flip matchups was perfect for the first 2 days or something.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
When you make brackets, the most disappointing part is you're good for a day or 2,
and you're oh my god, and then you get crushed by 1 loss.
Yeah, literally that one. When you say I don't know, last year I think I had I think I had Duke going pretty far, and then I don't know. I forgot if they left early, if they got kicked out early or not. But it's like then you see all this red on your back, and I'm like, dang.
Yeah.
It's so bad. Like, I mean, in some sense, like your percentile and stuff is like good, but then
Right.
once you get to that part, like once you get to like quarterfinals, semifinals, that's when it starts hurting and your percentage or whatever starts tanking. I'm like, oh
Yeah, no.
man, oh man.
And one little matchup doesn't matter as much in the first couple rounds as it does.
Yeah.
Like, as long as my Final Four is intact, I usually don't have much to complain about. I actually my national championship pick was the runner-up, Michigan. I had them; they were a 4 seed, and I had them winning the whole thing. And I remember there was the one game where my dad and he picked Kansas and I picked Michigan. They played one game against each other.
Yeah.
It was to get into the Final Four or something, and we were. It was a great game because they won by like 2 points, and that was probably the most fun game to watch. I generally don't have very good luck with picks. I remember the first bracket I ever made, I picked San Diego State, and they lost in like double overtime to like they were 2 seed, they lost to the 7 seed, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. But usually I get like one Final Four right. Do you make brackets?
Occasionally. I mean, in some sense it's like somewhat stressful for me because I always like to get things right, but then like sometimes it's like if you make a bracket, it's kind of like when I play fantasy football or whatever. I'm like, it takes away from my experience from like just enjoying the game.
No, you're right.
Then you're like always like, oh my god, this team needs to win or else my fantasy stuff will tank and stuff like that.
For me, that gives me a reason to watch March Madness. Like, I don't think I'd watch every single game with such like intensity if I didn't have like a winner that I'd picked. Like, it gives you like you become a fan in every game of some team, and it's awesome. I like it. Some people don't. Some people think it takes away from the joy of it.
I mean, honestly, for me, like, if I don't make a bracket, when I watch, like, a 15 versus 2, I either watch for the good team to just destroy and, like, make great plays, or I see whether or not this underdog can pull off an upset.
Which never happens except for last year and the year before that.
I mean, some of them do, but it depends, because most of the time the 15, 16 seeds are, like, these really small D1 schools.
Right.
So it's, like... it's not really fair, but like let's say if it's like a NC State or somebody like that as a 16 seed, then you might see them possibly pulling off an upset against like a Duke or Kansas or whatever.
And that's the thing. The way that they make the brackets is the teams that get the 14 to 16 seeds usually and almost always are the small schools that won their tournament. And so they force them to get into the tournament. Do you think that there should be automatic bids, or do you think the tournament should be completely 100% pick the 68 best teams? Or do you think it should be the way it is now?
I kind of like the way it is now. I mean, like, in some sense, you're getting a lot of different... I mean, in some sense, if you just do top 68, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, if you do just top 68, in some sense... that means you're just having the big conferences just getting plugged in. I mean, you'll just take, like, because they measure doing, like, RPI and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll just take, like, the whole Pac-12 and the whole Big Ten. Like, you see all the big conferences getting thrown into there. And so, I mean, maybe they might be deserving, but at the same time, you kind of, like, listen, I mean, for me personally, you wouldn't have never found out about Butler and what they did if they didn't get in. So, like...
NBCU, also.
Yeah, and all those teams. So, in that sense, it kind of takes away from all these, like, Cinderella stories if you just throw them all in. And in some sense, you always watch kind of those big teams all the time because they're always on, like, CBS Sports, NBC, or Fox, or something like that. So, I mean, I like the way it is right now. People can complain as much as they want, but I think once it rolls around... March Madness and stuff, nobody really complains. I mean, the only college thing that people complain about
is if their team doesn't make it.
Yeah, in college football. That's all.
Well, aren't they adding a tournament to that now?
They're kind of are, but like I don't know. I mean, college football is really confusing to be totally honest.
Well, the thing is that you can't really do a tournament when teams play once a week, and playing more than once a week is just like death on the players.
Yeah. Which is why, in some sense, I don't watch college football as much, because I feel... Like, a lot of people do, but I don't... Like, it just seems weird. Like, the football is just, like... in some sense, unorthodox, I would say.
Yeah,
'Cause you do a lot of, like, weird things, and you kind of see it as, like, because if you compare it to the NFL, like, nothing is just, none of the stuff they run in college is in the NFL, kind of, if you think about it.
Yeah, and I was watching a thing I think on TV where they're talking about whether colleges should even allow football. It was like a Malcolm Gladwell thing. It was like a board of scientists, philosophy dudes, and they were talking about whether football should even be allowed in colleges because the point of college is education, and football like kills brain cells, which is anti-education. And so they're talking about whether football should even be available to colleges, and obviously that was not coming from sports fans, because sports fans would be like, oh yeah, football should be in college because how else are you going to get player development? But it's kind of interesting to look at it from like the non-sports fan side of it, and see like, oh yeah, well actually these are human beings and they're being like injured, like sports people always talk about players like they're just kind of like numbers, like they're not actual people. Like when I think of Adrian Gonzalez, I'm just saying that because I'm looking at him right here on ESPN. I don't think of like, oh, he's probably got a great personality. I think he's a first baseman for the Dodgers. You don't think about the people as people. You think about them as what they can do. As athletes. I think it's kind of interesting that sports has kind of done that to us.
I mean, that's true, but at the same time, it's like, that's how they get their fame. That's how they make their money. That's how everybody knows them. So in some sense, it kind of is like the rewards and the bad things about being like that kind of player and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna completely switch gears here because I just remembered something that I wanted to talk about earlier. Yesterday, I sent out just a random tweet about football, and Christoph. Do you know Christoph?
Yeah.
He was like he interacted with me about football, and I'm like, oh, Christoph watches football. What the heck? Because he's just a big soccer fan, and I asked him if the Super Bowl was if the Seahawks made the Super Bowl, would he actually watch the game? Because that's a Seattle team in a big event, even if you don't watch it. He said he'd watch it for the commercials. So I guess, and then I asked him about the Mariners in the World Series, and he said, who are the Mariners? But which, I mean, I'm sure most people are like that at this point.
Yeah.
But my question for you is, I know you don't care about the Sounders much. If the Sounders were in their equivalent of, like, they were in the soccer cup, like the U.S. Soccer Cup, would you watch the game?
Probably. I mean, well, it depends on whether I have time or like, whether I can find it on TV or whatever. Because, I mean, in some sense, Major League Soccer, I don't think they have a lot of national broadcasts on local TV.
Right.
So, I mean, not saying, like, if they're on, like, ESPN or whatever, whether or not I'd watch it, but, like, in some sense, it's, like, I think soccer right now in America is, like, not really out there yet, because you always see...
Well, yeah, the league was formed in 95.
That's true, but I'm just saying, like...
Or, I think it was.
I'm just saying, like, if you really want people to watch it, you have to get onto, like, national broadcasts on, like, ABC, NBC, all these big, like, TV networks, because that's how you're gonna start, like, growing towards getting more fans and stuff. Because I've never really watched the Sounders at all. I never really cared for the Sounders. I mean, I care if they do good or not because they're sports team. But I've never been like really involved. The only times that I really recognize them was like when they got Clint Dempsey, because I know they're from Premier League, English Premier League, and so that was a big name. But other than that, I really haven't followed the Sounders at all. But
yeah, the league was formed in 93, by the way, and the Sounders were formed in 95. But I don't follow the Sounders at all. I've been to 2 games ever. And I guess it looks like they haven't won either the MLS Cup ever or the Supporters Shield, which is the title for best regular season record. So they haven't either gotten the best regular season record or won the MLS Cup ever. So I guess like even though they're revered as one of the better teams in the league, they haven't actually had anything to show for it. And To me, I don't know if I'd watch a game. I probably would watch. I probably if it was like a 1 game thing as opposed to like a whole playoffs, I'd probably watch it. If it was like a 7 game best of 7 playoffs, I'd watch one of them. But I don't think I'd spend like that much time watching it. And I wasn't actually a Seahawks fan really. Like I knew who they were. I'd be happy if they won. But I didn't watch any of their games ever until last year when they became good again. And I guess that kind of makes me a bandwagoner. But I'm just a lazy. I'm just a lazy football fan, and I only want to watch football if our teams are good because I don't like football very much. Not that I dislike it. I just don't go out of my way to watch it unless our teams are good. The only sports I'd kind of watch, even if they were bad, are baseball and college basketball, and maybe the NBA a little bit. But I don't even watch that much NBA because Portland doesn't really broadcast here. What NBA team do you like?
This year, like, do I think
Or do you like? Are you fan of?
Oh, okay. What fan of? All right. I know a lot of people hate this, but I do like the Thunder. Like,
You like the Thunder?
I just like them because they're a really fun team to watch. Like, Kevin Durant is actually, I think, probably the best player in the league. Like,
I used to think that, but even though I hate him, I think LeBron James is better. I hate LeBron, not Durant. I love Durant. I hate LeBron, but I think he's a better athlete.
Well, I think Durant this year, he's gonna be able to have a chance to show that he's better, like he's grown and become better and better. Because Westbrook right now is gonna be gone for at least 4 to 6 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks or something like that. So in some sense, the offense is gonna run through Durant, which is going to allow him to show that he's stepped his game up and be able to do what LeBron does and just pass, block, and still score, in some sense, I guess I can't really say much bad things about LeBron, but I don't know. I just think there's a lot more. I think Durant's ceiling, I feel like, is higher than LeBron's in some sense because he's good right now, and he's only been in the league for 5 years or something like that.
I can find that out.
But anyways, in his 5 years, you've seen that he's won scoring titles. He's brought his very young team to the final. I guess if I do the Cleveland versus Oklahoma City comparison, that's not really fair in some sense because Durant had Westbrook, Harden, Ibaka, I guess. But at the same time, it's like none of these guys have ever been in the playoffs, and they're still playing well. So, in that sense, whether or not you can debate LeBron's actually better or KD is better, you can't really do that. But I want to say that, yeah.
Yeah. I just looked up the age here, and LeBron is 28 and Kevin Durant is 25.
And Durant's been in the league for how many years again?
Durant's been in the league. Well, LeBron's been in the league for 10 years, and I think Durant said 5, but I'm not completely sure about that one. 6 years.
6 years? Oh, okay. So, what, 4 years difference?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's a lot smaller year difference than I thought. Okay, but anyways, I don't know. I just love Kevin Durant more than I do LeBron James.
And the thing about the NBA is it's such like I hate I actively hate 3 NBA teams, and I can't say that about any other sport. With baseball, it's just the Yankees, but I really I hate the Thunder, I hate the Heat, and I hate the Lakers. And when it was like Heat and Thunder in the playoffs a couple of years ago, I was I was like, oh my god, this is like the worst thing that could ever happen. And I found myself rooting for the Heat, like I'm sure most Seattle fans did. I remember there was a poll, because ESPN does all these polls, and they show the regional vote for like, what state voted what. And it was like, who do you want to win the NBA Finals? And it was the Thunder or the Heat. And 2 states said the Heat, and that was Florida, because the Heat are in Florida, and Washington, because they just didn't want the Thunder to win. And everyone else said the Thunder. Because, the only people that have anything against the Thunder are people that are from Seattle and know them as being the Sonics. And like, do you think that we'll get a team back at any point?
I think we will. I mean, there's just no way that the NBA will just stop being in Seattle, and that would be really sad. I think if they didn't want to come.
Because
back.
David Stern has come out and said that he's completely against expansion, but the thing is that it won't be his decision anymore because this year he's retiring.
Yeah. And actually, hearing from the press conference that a while back when they announced or something or other that Sacramento was gonna keep their team or something like that, the new commissioner seems really open to expansion, and at that point Stern's gonna be gone, and we don't have to care about him.
He was open. He's open.
Yeah, he was open to expansions, and it sounded like he was really optimistic about bringing basketball in some sense back to Seattle. So that, I mean, I'm holding out hope, but at the same time, I don't know when this is gonna get done because, I mean, the league, I guess, apparently is getting a new TV deal soon or whatever.
Right, and there's been some talk about how the league is watered down enough and that there aren't enough good players to have more teams, which I kind of understand because I remember Abdul Gaddy was the point guard for the Huskies, and he absolutely sucked in the last couple of years. But he got a training camp invite to the Bobcats, and I know they're the Bobcats. I know it's just a training camp invite, but the fact that he was even considered for a roster spot, given how poorly he did in college, was kind of surprising to me. That a player can be that bad and make it in the NBA. That bad in college, rather. But then there's also stories like guys like John Brockman, who are powerhouses in college and then go to the NBA and get lost. And no one ever picks them again. Justin Detman was another one from the Huskies. And a lot of these players just go overseas and succeed there. Brockman did that, and he's in France right now, and he's doing great. But it's just kind of interesting.
Well, the thing is, the NBA developmental leagues and stuff aren't good at all. Like the D League.
No one watches the D League.
Well,
either.
The D League is just. It's a lot of, I won't say street ball, but like, I feel like you don't get anything out of it. Like it doesn't really prepare you well enough because in the D League you just win off talent. You're not winning off really team, or at least that's how I feel. And then you see all these guys that go down and try to be like, oh, I'm so good and stuff like that, and I just beat you off using speed and stuff. But then once you get to the NBA when everybody else is like that, it's like you don't learn anything. You rarely see guys that come from the D League and start having success in the NBA. It's really a pass-fail.
Yeah, like Justin Detman, I think he won Player of the Year last year in the D League, and he got a 10-day contract with the Spurs, and then it didn't get renewed. So he's one of those guys that's kind of lost in the D League, where he's too good for the D League but not good enough for the NBA. And
I also think one thing is that they need to really change that college thing where I think they should make guys stay at least 3 or 4 years.
You think people should be required to get a degree?
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, there's so many, and because the NBA rosters are so much smaller than anything.
Yeah, 15 players, but only 13 can be active, or 12 can be active, something like that.
In football, huge rosters, 50 plus, and
baseball's 25.
Baseball's 25, but
and
the thing is,
NBA's 12.
The thing is, in baseball, you're drafted, you're expected to go into the developmental leagues,
because no one goes right into that. Right, no one goes right into the majors. That never happens, and that's the kind of people get drafted in the NBA, they play immediately. People get drafted in the NFL, they play immediately. People get drafted in MLB and they wait usually 4 or 5 years before they play. That's also why people don't watch the MLB draft either, unless you're a avid baseball fan, because you're not going to see these guys until 4 years down the line.
Yeah, see, I mean, the NBA is just, I feel like if you don't make guys stay in college and you don't have a good developmental league at all, it's just, you're sending guys into the wash. I don't know, there's that one guy that shot somebody or whatever, I don't know, a couple years back or something like that, and he was in the D League. I don't know. I don't know. So. But yeah, I just don't think the NBA D League's that good at all in helping players and making them develop and stuff. Because you don't see oh, we're calling this guy up from the D League or whatever. You rarely see that.
Well, also most of the players in the D League aren't even attached to teams.
Mhm.
Most of them aren't under contract. That's a weird thing about the D League is half of them are guys that are attached to contract and just sent down because there's no room for them,
Mhm.
and then the other half is just guys that are just trying to make a name for themselves and don't have
Yeah.
any team attachment. So they're not really a team. Like you have a team in the D League, and you have like half the players that aren't attached to a team, and half the players that are, but they're attached to different teams.
Yeah.
And so it's weird. Like you play well and you won't play with the same guy. Like if you're a point guard and you have your shooting guard or you have your center or whatever, and you're reliant on those guys, and you are good enough that the three you get like moved up, you won't play together. You'll be opponents next time, and you're guaranteed almost to not play together, because there's no way you're gonna have space for them. But I guess you could say the same thing about college, but it's kind of an incentive to not be good almost, I guess, if you have attachments with other players and on your team.
Well,
although I wouldn't go as far to say people care that much to not be good, but it's kind of it's just weird.
Yeah.
The system.
I don't know. I mean, basketball, I feel like
it's just a weird system. Like it needs to be fixed. Like all the whole like everything in the NBA just needs like to be overhauled. Like there's a lot of problems with it, the way that it's run. I mean, the rules are so much different from college.
Yeah.
And if they're forcing players to go into college and to prepare them for the NBA, then the rules should be more similar than they are. Because there's the whole 3 seconds in the key thing, they don't call it in college. And fouls are called differently, and it's in halves instead of quarters.
Yeah.
It's just some weird.
Well, I think the
5 fouls versus 6.
The halves and the quarters, and the fouls thing is kind of, I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's all right. I feel like the different things that they need to change are like, pretty sure the 3-point line's different.
Yeah, 3-point line's a different place, and 3 seconds of the key thing is the one that bothers me the most. Because centers that are dominant in college, they play 4 years. I know it's kind of rare, but they'll play 4 years and they'll be dominant defensively, and they can just stand in the key as long as they want. But then if you go into the NBA, you get penalized for it. And I think that penalties should be the same. You should raise people up in the system knowing the penalties are going to be the same, so they can get used to it. And because what you're doing is, in college, you're forcing them to abuse something that they can't in the NBA. You're preparing them for something that is going. You're setting them up for failure, ultimately.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I just don't think that. That's why when you have the D League, and you have it like really poorly like that, and you don't make guys stay 3 years. I mean, in some sense, like you said, there are differences and stuff like that. But I feel like fundamentals and stuff like that would be a whole lot better, and it might make the transitioning easier because, well, at least for a guard or whatever or something like that. But I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I like college a lot more than I like the NBA for more reasons that I feel like they're more motivated as players also because they have something they're striving towards. They're trying to be really good players so that they can get onto the NBA, or just because they're trying to win as a team. I feel like they play more as a team. I don't watch the NBA at all, but I watch the Huskies basketball like diligently, and I try to watch every single one of their games. But the NBA is just like, they don't move, they don't play defense. Like, I watch their games and there's half the team just sitting there, and it's kind of weird.
So, who are you rooting for this year in the NBA?
So I like the Blazers actually, and I like them as in I'm a fan of them, and I've been a fan of them since the Sonics moved away actually, just because I guess they're now our new local team, which is interesting because I don't think most people know who they even are, but they're like our local team. And I guess I posed this kind of question to Brian yesterday also, but so say the Mariners moved away.
Yeah.
To a new town. Like, say they moved to, like, frickin' Tallahassee or something, Tennessee. Who would you be a fan of for baseball?
Oh, I don't know. Probably...
or would you just stop paying attention entirely?
Oh, that's probably... I'd probably stop paying attention. Like, or not be as avid as I am now, which is, like, somewhat pretty avid.
Having a team, even a bad one, is what makes you want to watch other teams too.
Yeah, because, I mean, well, I mean, like, it makes you want to be like, hey, why can't we be like that team?
Yeah.
Why can't we be like that
Yeah, because
team?
when you're watching other teams, you're constantly comparing yourself to
Yeah.
the other teams. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I'd probably, like, let's say we don't have a team, and let's say I'm watching a Boston game, be like, dang, Boston's really good.
Yeah.
But not have anything else to compare it to. So, I mean, in some sense, I'd still watch it just because it's baseball, and baseball is actually pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But I won't be like every day be like, hey, when's the game on? When's the game on?
Right.
It'd just be like, oh, hey, look, turn on the TV. There's a game. I'll watch for a while. But then again, I don't know.
Yeah. Here's an interesting question. Actually, I'm kind of changing topics again. I just thought of this. What sport that's not really televised would you like to see, like, as become a major sport that people like pay attention to and care about? And I for me personally, I think I'd probably like ultimate frisbee.
Mm-hmm.
Like that'd be really cool. Like if that was like on TV. I know we have a team, the Seattle Rainmakers. They just formed a National Ultimate League or something, Major League Ultimate, something like that. They have two leagues actually, because there was one on the East Coast, and then for 2011, and then one formed on the West Coast for 2012, and they're different leagues. They don't play each other. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like when the MLB was. They were separate. No, it's kind of like when the NBA was the NBA and the ABA. It's like that. And so it's kind of interesting that we have a team. I have no idea if they're good or not. I don't even know who any of the other teams are. I think it was like the Philadelphia Cutters or something like that. And I would totally watch Ultimate Frisbee if that was just something that was televised and had a lot of media coverage.
Mm-hmm. Well, I kind of like, I mean, I'm not really, well, I feel like just in general, I want to see like development of like, of broadcasts of like the Olympic sports.
Yeah.
Because I think that would be.
Yeah, because I watch the Olympics because there's so many cool sports that we don't normally get to watch, like handball and water polo and like gymnastics.
I mean, I feel like they do have that in, what is it called, that Universal Sports Channel or something like that.
Yeah, but no one watches it because it's not good broadcasting.
Well, yeah, that's true, and you can't really find it anywhere. I mean,
yeah, really you have to actively like look. Mm-hmm. Like it won't just be on ESPN.
Yeah, like I wish they would kind of do that. Like have, I mean, NBC, I think. CBS, they kind of have like occasional broadcasts of like track or field.
Yeah. They do like the World Track and Field.
Yeah.
Events and
all the big things, but like I'd really like to watch more of those kind of things. Like that's what is like interesting. Like,
that's like
I might not know anybody that's playing. But
yeah. Like do you know anyone that like plays rugby or like that plays handball or like?
Yeah,
I know a couple of water polo kids, but that's from the swim team. I mean, I don't know. Like, I've never met someone that's like, yeah, I play handball on the weekends. Like, who does that? I'm on a select handball team. Like,
but it's like so interesting.
It's cool.
Like, people throw the ball like really
and
hard.
If you're out there and you play handball, you're a cool person.
Yeah.
And I want to hear about that. I want to join that team. Maybe not join it, but I'd love to like watch it. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I remember.
It's always like really like countries that we don't interact with as much, I guess. Like the Asian countries a lot have like those really cool sports. Like they have volleyball, like that you kick, like instead of like hitting. It's like kicking volleyball, and it's like, what the heck? Those guys are like super athletic. They like jump in the air, do axe kicks to serve.
Wow.
And it's crazy. I forget what it's called, but they have some really cool sports over there.
Well, I think like the fact that we're so caught up in like the NBA, NFL,
yeah, we're so like,
and all these things. We're just like not really. I mean, I'm open to expanding my sports horizons, but a lot of people are just like, we need football. If we don't have football, we're not America.
Yeah, do you not get tired of football? Like after like 55 years of watching it your whole life? Like,
well, the thing is like,
I guess most people live longer than 55, but like.
Well, I guess in some sense, those people just watch one game, or their own team.
But you've seen everything at some point.
That's true. I just like, I guess if you're a fan of a team like your city or whatever, you're never gonna get bored because you always want to see them win.
Yeah.
And there's always lows and highs.
But I think you'd stop watching for enjoyment at some point because you'll have seen everything, or most things, I guess, that you can see.
Well, I guess I guess like what I'm talking about, those guys that are like beanie football, or like those guys that just like to watch every game.
And
not,
I think
not exactly for their team, because like if you're watching for your team, that's kind of a little bit different because you always want them to win. Because like who gets tired of watching your team win championships?
That's true. I mean, unless they win every year, it's like, okay, well, there's another one. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. I was just thinking about. I think I wrote an article about this a little while ago. I think some people like watch games for, they like to see records broken. They like to see new things happen. At what point do some records become unbeatable? Like at some point, it's going to become humanly impossible for some record to be broken. Like fastest 50 freestyle for swimming.
Mm-hmm.
So some guy at some point is going to swim the fastest possible 50-meter freestyle, and no one's ever going to break it. Like it seems like records are getting broken more and more often than they used to, but I feel like it's got a peak at some point,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's going to drop off, and then you're going to see like records seldom ever get broken.
Mm-hmm.
Because at some point, you can't swim a 1 second 50 freestyle. You can't just like do it in 1 second. So at what point do things like that become impossible? And it's kind of interesting to think about, like how many home runs can someone physically hit in a season. And of course the games and technology are changing all the time, and so because of that you have to take that into account. I mean, at some point someone could get rockets on their feet and swim, I guess, in a second, but I mean, besides that, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think records will always continue to break unless there's a huge change in some.
Right, and that's why they always have those things about like top 10 records that will never be broken, and it's like Cy Young like pitching like 400 innings, like that doesn't happen anymore,
Mm-hmm.
or 500, however many he pitched.
The thing is, it's possible.
Pitchers are so specialized now.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, but it's just in the way the game is formatted today, like in baseball or whatever, you can't really like do that anymore.
Right, and the thing is that now the players there's the talent gap. I think back then was much bigger. Like the gap in talent between the best guy and the worst guy was much greater than it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Where like now the worst guy in a major league team had to fight like hundreds of other players in his little league, in his junior high school, in his high school and college, and in the minor leagues just to get that last spot on the roster of the worst team.
Mm-hmm.
Like the last bullpen pitcher of the Astros, like Reiner Cruz or something. And he's probably closer in talent to Mike Trout than Cy Young was to whatever schmuck the last team had on their roster.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so I think in that sense records are not going to be broken as easily,
Mm-hmm.
because players there's so much demand, there's so many players now. When there's a lot more players in the league or trying to fight for spots in the league,
Mm-hmm.
they're all going to be good.
Yeah.
And back then, some guy would farm and then like he'd come at night and just play baseball. And then there'd be like Cy Young, who'd probably just like pitch every single like second of his life. I mean, I don't know, maybe he had a job too, but it's kind of interesting like that too.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, what I find really interesting is that now in today's like sports, everything or whatever, we always we make a big deal about coaches.
Yeah.
This coach sucks or this coach sucks.
But coaches don't actually a coach cannot physically make a player better.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can help, they can like tweak the way he thinks, but they can't give him like twice the muscle mass he has. I mean, unless they inject him with steroids or something. But they can't make someone better.
Mm-hmm.
That much.
That's why
anyway.
I see whenever people are like, hey, let's fire the coach. It's just like you're trying to find a scapegoat to for something that about your team, or to blame somebody for the reason why your team sucks. Like, let's look at the New York Giants. They're 0-6 right now, and now they're everybody's fire the coach Tom Coughlin just because whatever.
And when they scream fire the coach, they're screaming fire the coach for the same guy that won coach of the year, manager of the year, whatever, 2 years ago. Like Ron Gardenhire won manager of the year in 2009 with the Twins, and he just got fired. Like, okay, is he really good or is he really bad? Like, pick one. Like, he can't, there's middle ground. I mean, managers, like players, can be inconsistent.
Yeah.
And just because some guy wins MVP and the next year he hits 127 or something, You know, it happens. Like,
I mean, for all I know, Pete Carroll could be a terrible coach, and we just have good players.
yeah, and coaches. The thing about coaches versus players is coaches can't go through slumps.
Yeah.
Because coaches have their job is to like train people mentally, and your brain can't go into a slump.
Yeah.
your hitting can, but you can't. Your mindset can't go into a slump. Like, you forgot how to coach people. Like, so I mean,
it's a little bit different. I feel like in baseball you have a lot more management to do than in like. Well, I mean, you do have management in like baseball. I mean, basketball and football as well. It's just it doesn't seem like as serious. I mean, like in basketball, like all you do is like, oh, team is giving up like, or I mean, the opponent team just scored 10 points in a row, and you scored like they're on a 10-0 run or whatever.
mm-hmm.
You call a timeout just to break the momentum. But in like baseball, it's like you have to like make the call the plays, and like it's not like. I mean, I feel like.
Yeah, and I guess I can see that reasoning to it. Like, if you can't keep up with the times,
mm-hmm.
I guess you'd be fired. Like,
but overall, like I said, it's really all output.
Like, you know, with general managers, I mean, obviously, yeah, their mindsets probably don't change too. But if they like keep the same mindset for 20 years
mm-hmm.
and they don't evolve with the changing landscape of the game, then obviously they're going to be in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess in that sense, it's probably true. But I mean, how much can change in 5 years for a manager? Like, I'm sure Ron Gardenhire doesn't live under a rock. I'm sure he knows to some extent how the game is changing, and the stats that were in 2009 versus the ones that are now available aren't that much different,
mm-hmm.
and the kinds of like things also. The funniest thing I find is that they still use bullpen phones. Like, they still use like those dorky little landline phones with cords. Like, can't they just like text the bullpen coach and be like, hey, send Jason Mott into the bullpen or whatever.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, keeps a classic look to baseball.
Yeah, but then do you remember? Was it last year or 2 years ago when the bullpen phone failed, and it was like it was a World Series game, and the bullpen phone failed, and because of that they got the wrong pitcher and they lost the game.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was when the Cardinals won the World Series, and they called in for God, what's his name? Well, whatever his name was. They called in for a pitcher, and he called for him to be warmed up, and the bullpen coach didn't get it because the phone was broken.
Oh, really?
And so he came up like this, and he was like calling for a pitcher, and he's like, "What? Like, no one's warming up. Like, who are you calling for?" And the guy had to come in cold, and then they lost the game, and who knows if that was why.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I understand that's tradition, but even so, I mean, if it's for the effectiveness of the game.
Well, what I would say about that is, like, if we have so much technology right now, why don't you just make it like your phone right here, just make it wireless, like, or something like.
Oh, yeah,
no. If we have that great of technology, you just make it better. I mean, just make sure that they're good and like always improve.
So have someone who's like hired to like make sure the bullpen phone's working.
Yeah, something like that.
I remember they used to use like the bullpen like car, and it was like a golf cart, and they'd like bring the bullpen pitcher all the way around.
Yeah.
It's like such a like long time. Now they just run across the field because that's a lot quicker than like getting them in the car and like seatbelts first and like wheeling them at like 2 miles an hour around the warning track.
Like, if you think about it, that's like the teams have so much money. They can't spend like $100 or $50 to try to fix their phone or something.
Yeah,
or like
get a freaking iPhone.
Something like that. I mean, I guess teams just are really stingy about their money then. I don't know.
I mean, there's some teams are stingier than others.
Mm-hmm.
Like, baseball is also the sport where there's the biggest gap in payroll between the best and the worst. And it's also, I think, the smallest gap in ability level, which is interesting. Because I think that the Astros are not, who are the least financially able team, I don't think they're that much worse than the Dodgers than, say, the Bobcats are to the Heat. I think the Bobcats and the Heat,
the Bobcats actually suck.
Right. Well, I mean...
if you're...
I think I just contradicted myself, because I think on the last podcast I said the opposite. But, I mean, thinking about it now that we've had this discussion with the D-League, I think I've changed my mind on that topic. I think now that the Astros compared to the Dodgers are not as big of a comparison as the Bobcats to the Heat.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because the league's as watered down. But also, I mean, financially, though, the difference between the Astros and the Dodgers is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And compared, I mean, they have a cap in the NBA, so.
Yeah. I mean, like I said with that topic about, like, how like, developmental and stuff like that, it's just, like, in baseball, you could spend, like, what, half your career, or half your playing time in the minors getting better, while some, like, Bryce Harper, like, 2 years. But, like, still, that's getting you ready to be in the majors and productive and stuff like that. But then you look at the D-League and the NBA, it's like, I really don't think... I mean, honestly, it's kind of like a pity league in some sense.
It's a pity league.
Because...
It's like the party favor league, like the consolation league.
Exactly.
Like, good job for trying, guys.
It's like, you never see D-League players come up and be superstars at all.
Yeah, no,
you
it's
always
true.
see, like, LeBron James, he came out immediately after the draft. Carmelo Anthony right out of the draft.
Yeah, good players never go to the D-League.
Yeah, like, it's just, you don't have any development.
And usually when players get sent down to the D-League, you never hear about them again.
Except if they want to be a bench warmer.
Yeah, like Tyler Honeycutt, he was like a really big star for UCLA.
Yeah.
I remember he got drafted by like the Warriors or some team in California. It was the Kings. He got drafted by the Kings, and the Kings sent him down to the D League, and I still have not heard about him since then. I have no idea what he's doing.
He is probably right now, I don't know.
Crying because he's not in the NBA.
Yeah, or dealing drugs or whatever. or whatever like thing that the guys do, because I feel like in the NBA, like I said, the D League's not good. You really, if it's like one shot, and then like most of these guys, they leave as a freshman or whatever, so like they don't have a degree, or in the first place they didn't really want to like, you know, learn, or I mean, didn't want to go to school, and just thought they could just go to the bank with MBA and stuff like that.
Yeah, I just searched Tyler Honeycutt, and there's no news on him. He is so gone. Yeah. Yeah. There's absolutely no news on him, and there's no links to him. So yeah, he's gone. So yeah, the D League just like eats players up.
Basically, I think.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like, I was remembering like the draft. And in drafts, like, you know, there's always mock drafts where they try to, like, predict who's going to be first and second, and, you know, they think who's going to be where. And they're usually, like, whenever there's a big shocker, it seems to work out more often than not. Like, when the Seahawks took Bruce Irvin in, like, the 16th overall pick, and everyone's like, oh my god, it's, like, the worst move ever. And now Bruce Irvin, like, besides being injured, has been pretty good.
You mean suspended?
Injured, suspended, whatever he was. Yeah, he got DUI, didn't he?
No, it was an Adderall.
Oh, okay. Regardless, you know, but as a player, he's been pretty good. I mean, you can't account for that kind of thing.
Well, I think that
teams know what they're doing.
It depends on team scouting. Like, I mean, I guess that's true, because because there's a reason why they're hired to be whatever, to be the general manager or be the coach, rather than any old fan like us, because, like, I don't think any of us would have drafted Bruce Irvin at that point. We'd probably draft, like, the best player.
Right, but we're not scouts either, and I'm sure they had way more information than any of the ESPN guys did on him as well. And, you know, like when Mike Trout was picked 25th overall, there was reasons for that, too. That was another scouting thing. Mike Trout, everyone's like, oh, why was Mike Trout selected 25th? Why wasn't he selected, like, first? But the reason was that he lived in New Jersey. And he lived in a small town in New Jersey where he was the only good player in his high school. And his games got rained out constantly. And so scouts didn't want to go out to watch his games because they didn't think he was good enough. Because, you know, they hadn't really heard about him. And because he would have been the only player they would have been there to scout. And they didn't want to deal with all the rainouts. And so the only team that was brave enough to keep with it was the Angels, who took him. And So there's still flaws in the game, and people are human. But I generally think whenever there's a draft move made, or even any move made, and people like jump all on it for being an awful move, like you have to know they know what they're doing. Like they've had all the information they can possibly have, and they're making an educated decision based on what they know. Whether it works out or not, like obviously some things don't work out, but you can't say, "Oh, I knew it." Like no, you didn't know because you didn't know the information they knew. You might have made the same move, that kind of thing. By the way, Tyler Honeycutt, fun fact, was traded earlier this year, February 21st, 2013, was traded, was traded to the Rockets, but I guess he is now not. That's literally the most recent news on him. So I guess he probably got dropped after that, and I guess that was when Marcus Morris got traded to the Suns.
Was it that the Thomas Robinson trade?
Yeah, that was Thomas Robinson trade, who's now with the Blazers, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, he got traded. Sure. He got traded to the Blazers.
Well, yeah. I mean, the same talk about how, what do you see after like a guy goes to the D League? It's like they don't go anywhere.
He is playing for a team in Israel.
Right.
Ironi Nes Ziona. Ironi Nes Ziona. I'm probably just completely mispronouncing that. I tried doing it with a cool accent that time.
He's basically never coming back.
Yeah, he's in Israel. I actually really like the fact that the NBA is like available in Europe, and like how all these countries are taking the NBA, like China. I mean, like it's probably the fastest growing sport in the world, and I wish like baseball would do that, but the only places outside the U.S. that baseball's played in are like the Hispanic countries and the Asian countries. And you rarely see or hear of baseball in Europe because they've got cricket and they've got other things like that they like better. And the NBA is so like different from anything else besides, I guess, whatever the women played in the Olympics. That was kind of like it, only way different. Like handball, it wasn't handball; it was something weird. But it's like so different from any other sport that countries don't have anything to compare it to, and so they take it and they start playing it. And I think that's really cool, actually. But how long do you think it'll be until before America has a real challenge in the Olympics in basketball?
It's probably. I mean, I feel like.
Because all the really good players from those countries, from Europe, come to the NBA.
Well, the thing is like, if you really think about it, they kind of already do have a challenge. Like, when they play, they actually have to play really hard. You would think that they just smash teams, and they do smash teams, but when you play like the good teams, they actually do. You watch their faces; they do actually have to try. So in some sense, they're keeping up. The other countries are getting there. It's just that when you have a huge all-star team that you're facing, it's really hard to...
the all-star team of the best players in the world, basically, besides a few European players who aren't in the equation. And, I don't think that any of the other leagues are going to get enough prestige that they'll be sucked away from the NBA, that players will be sucked away from the NBA.
Yeah.
Because a lot has to happen for that. Maybe what I've actually heard something about is that they might make a division in Europe for the NBA. Like they might make 5 teams in Europe that are in the NBA, and what a team will do is a team will go and travel and play all their teams, play all the European teams, then come back and then they'll be done for the year. And I think that'd be kind of interesting to have a division of teams in Europe for the NBA.
I mean, it's interesting, but I feel like it's that same thing about the NFL possibly getting a team in, like, England. It's the travel time and relativity.
Right, but they just go once, is the thing. They would, say, the Trailblazers were going to go and play the team in Spain or whatever. Like, there's one in Spain, England, France, Germany, and Italy or something. And they'd go and they'd play all those teams and then they'd come back. So they'd play them all in one trip, and then they'd come back, and then be done.
Well, in that sense, that's not really... What? It does. Okay, it can work, but the only thing is like
They'd go in rotation so that there'd be 5 teams in Europe at all times, probably.
the only problem with that is like what if so do the European teams
Right,
are they
that's what I was
factored
thinking
are
of.
they factored into the playoffs at all?
Well, probably, because it'd be the NBA, so I'm
Well,
sure.
then why won't the Europeans go to the U.S. and play them?
I'm assuming that they would probably make a system where the European teams would come over here, too. I'm sure we play away and then they'd play here. They'd probably do the same thing, which is they'd probably travel like a group of teams, then come back. What I'm guessing would happen is they'd send like 5 teams from the NBA to go play the 5 European teams, and they'd play all 5, then they'd come back. Then the European teams would come and play like 5 NBA teams, and they'd go back, and they'd be switching off.
Okay, well the problem with that is that
The
NBA,
European teams would be traveling a lot.
That's one thing, but the NBA schedule is
Tight.
usually want at least 4 games, 4 or 5 or 6 games, or probably 5 most, but 5 games a week. So in that sense, it's like if American team goes to Europe, they play whatever games they play then, and then they'll have to get back to the U.S. They're not gonna get like weeks to like at least 4 days to like regroup themselves. They're probably only gonna get like 2 days, and I think that would mess with the product in America because you'll see guys getting jet lagged and stuff like that. So I mean, it might work, but at the same time, it's just like why do we want to mess with the NBA? I mean,
well, I mean, obviously they want to expand their audience, and they want people in Europe to, they want people in Europe to care about basketball, and they want people to watch it there. That's kind of the same reason why. Who was it that just played in England for football? They had like a game in England, and they do that for advertisement purposes. I mean, the Mariners had one of their 2012. They had the 2012 opener in Japan.
Yeah.
Because, they want the countries to see this is what a good matchup looks like, and the kids that are growing up there be like, oh, I want to be just like them, and they grow up playing the sports. And I think that's the main draw for the NBA adding European teams is it would help them jumpstart a league. Like, they have their own leagues, but it would help their leagues become better. And then, so say there was like a team in Spain. Say there was like a Madrid team that was in the NBA. All the little kids growing up in Spain would want to play for that team. And so they would have a bigger number of good players, and they'd be able to grow their league. So the incentive is there for both the NBA because they get more money, and for the leagues in those respective countries trying to grow their fan base and their talent base. So I think it works out for everyone.
The only thing I'll say about that is like, check out England's English Premier League. Do they ever come to America to play it like at all or whatever like that? Like, do we ever see Manchester United versus Chelsea? And
No, because they're selfish. See, we're gonna be better to them than they are to us.
But if you think about it,
and actually, they do sometimes come to play your our teams.
Well, they do, but the thing is, they're kind of like for fun. Like when you actually watch in English Premier, like when they're in season, like like, do we ever get to see them like that?
No, because they're focused on their own league. But
no, but I mean, like because
so what you're saying is, would we want them to make a team in their league in the U.S.?
No, well, kind of, but like, and I'm saying is like, you know how when we went over there to NFL, we brought 2 teams over and we played a game there, right? Why can't English Premier League soccer bring their teams and go to like, I don't know, Washington D.C. and play a soccer game there too? So it's like why don't they do that, and why should we do that?
Well, someone has to start it, don't they?
Well, that's true, but like, it's just like, it doesn't seem like we should make that effort if it seems like, well, I mean, I guess soccer is just not that popular in America.
Well, it's growing, especially here in the Northwest. I mean, Vancouver and Portland just got their own teams. At the same time, even. So, I mean, the Northwest is kind of a hub for soccer and lacrosse. And that's another fun sport I think should become popular. I think it will become popular, is actually lacrosse. I don't know about Ultimate. I think it will rise. I don't know how far it will get. I think lacrosse is kind of here to stay. I think a lot of people are going to start playing it more.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll start. I don't even know if there's a professional league. I'm sure there is, but I'm sure it'll start being more popular. I'm sure that people will be raising their kids to play it more, and because it's less dangerous than football, I think football is kind of a deteriorating sport at this point, because parents know the risks, and I don't think we're going to be seeing as many good football players anymore. I think the league's going to start becoming worse. I don't know if it'll ever stop being played, the NFL, but I think it's kind of doomed to failure. I think we're kind of at a peak of good players as right this second.
That's true. I mean, with all the concussions and stuff, and even though technology is getting better, we have seen, I think, a lot of people becoming like more wary about football in that sense.
Like, my kids aren't going to play football. No way.
I mean, I think a lot of people just like, you know how I think that's why football is just like you see it becoming maybe the most popular sport in America right now. It's like we like watching it, but we just don't want to get involved with it.
Right? Yeah, like
ourselves.
like kids are like, "Hey, you want to come play football?" I'm like, I'm good. I'll just watch it."
I mean, I guess sometimes being a spectator is better than the actual player.
Yeah.
In some sense.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing where it's like, it's one of those sports that's being harmed the more we learn about what it does to people.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think baseball and basketball are getting better with technology, and I think football's getting worse with it. Because it's an old-fashioned game. It was made by Americans for Americans, because we
didn't want to play rugby. We're like, screw rugby.
It was like the anti-English thing that we've gone through so much, where we don't want to be like England.
Yeah. I don't know. Trying to think of comparisons that we are the same, but
yeah, like
really...
we changed the language and we changed a bunch of things, and I think it's just one of those things.
That's true. We don't even talk the same anymore. We don't say like. We don't have the accents.
Pick up cheerio.
Okay.
All right.
Anyways.
On that note, I think we're done for the day. So thanks for coming on, Thomas.
All right. Cool. No problem.
And hopefully we'll have this up, because as we're recording this right now, I don't actually have the first podcast up and recorded. Well, I have it recorded. I just don't have it up and uploaded yet. So yeah, and episode 3 will hopefully be here shortly. So see you guys.